All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to Basecamp Briefings today. We're doing things a little bit differently today. So I think this is our eighth session, and we're going to break it up a little bit and do more of a informal Q&A style. So I'm super excited to be joined today by my good friends, Carol and Beth. So I'm Kristen. I'm the founder CEO of Summit Strategy. And I've been doing this for 20 something years. I love helping government contractors and professional services firms win more work by building better systems and not just chasing shiny RFPs. And I'm joined by Carol. Carol, you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, yeah, I'm Carol Turpin, and I've been doing this for over 30 years. So yeah, I'm older than Kristen, but I also enjoy very much helping companies get that win rate up and making those proposals shiny.
And then Beth.
Hi guys, I am Beth Good. I'm also very excited to be part of the team. I don't have quite the level of experience of these ladies, but I do have 15 years in the industry, really focused on strategy and pricing.
Carol, I think that was a nice way of her saying that she's way younger than
She's
us.
a lot younger than I am, yeah.
I heard that. I picked up on that for sure.
Yeah, I'll give her grief about that later.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to dive in here. We got a ton of questions submitted ahead of time, so I'm super excited to go through them all. Hopefully, we'll get through them all in the hour that we have set aside. And let's get into it, I guess. Let's go. So our first question is from someone, and all of these questions were submitted anonymously, by the way. There was a way in the survey when you submitted a question to say whether you wanted to be anonymous or whether you wanted us to say your name, or at least your first name. Didn't even have to be your full name. And every single person that submitted a question picked to be anonymous. So you guys were not feeling, getting out there. You guys wanted to be in the dark shadows asking us all these questions. So we will do our best to give you our opinions. Okay, so the first one is from someone that said, do you have any advice for a small business trying to survive in this new world? And then they had a note here that said that they had lost several contracts. They were terminated for convenience, which I know has been happening a lot this year. So I know, Beth, you've got some thoughts and ideas for this question.
Yeah, I sure do. So, just a couple of points. I would say the first one is don't chase everything. It can be really tempting to spend all day on sam.gov, just scrolling, hitting save, feeling like you're making progress. You're just making this huge list, but really you're getting quantity over quality, and that's not great. So instead, set up your pipeline foundationally to meet the financial goals. Maybe that's just staying afloat this year, and that's totally fine. And then really focus your effort on capturing those resources and capturing those opportunities and making sure that you're good to go, because that scrolling, it's just doom scrolling, has diminishing returns. So don't chase everything, really focus that pipeline. The second would be to partner smarter. Maybe your goal has always been to be a prime, but right now, maybe that's not the best position for you, and it's okay. So let's go look at those partners and really strengthen, especially when some of the bigs are better positioned to weather the storm that we're in right now, and finding a way to get that work share with them, especially on existing contracts where maybe you could bring in a lower cost advantage or some value add that they're missing. That's a great way to kind of get in. And then just as always, make sure you document that relationship specifically around work sharing pricing, either before the win or as you're getting started, so that you're not just part of the value add, but then you don't actually get the work on the backside. So partnering smarter can really, really be helpful and also get you some more reliable revenue. And then the last one is really just to protect your cash flow. A lot of times we want to make big investments and take big swings and big opportunity risk. And maybe that's just not where that lies right now. Maybe looking for smaller, more focused investments is going to be the way to go. So bringing in the right person to help support your pipeline, or bringing in someone to do capture, or someone to really take a hard look at your financials and figure out where can we save money here and there. If you don't have cash flow, you don't have a business. So it's really important to recognize, if you're trying to survive, maybe this isn't the year to swing for the stars. There's a lot of ways to get outsourced quality, cost-effective support, and it can be a really tough balance, but you can't cut the BD, you can't cut the operation, so let's find a way to cost-effectively do both.
Yeah, I think that last piece is so hard because, especially if you were having really strong years last year and then all of a sudden, it's like overnight everything had to just be paused and cut. And it's hard to make those really tough decisions of what stays and what goes and where you continue investing to grow your business. I know for me as a business owner, it's the same tough challenge.
Well, it's hard, right? And especially when you've had really good years, it's humbling. It's humbling to take a look, and nobody likes to cut cost. At the end of the day, though, you have to have a sustainable business model, and if that means cutting cost in certain places and pulling back in certain places, that's what it means. Similar to how we all run a household budget, right? Sometimes we just can't afford that big vacation that we had our eyes set on. Save it for the next year and just kind of focus on survival. Right now, it won't always be like this.
You sound like my husband now. We can't go on another vacation. Oh, but really, we can. I want to go.
I mean, this is the advice I give other people, but yeah, in my
Right?
household, I'm also the one. He like mentions the word, and I'm already planning the whole trip.
Yep.
Yep.
One thing I'd add here is, this is it's been a crazy year, obviously. And, with the market shifting and stuff, like I think a lot of companies, especially in the beginning of this year, just kind of froze and they didn't know what to do, where to go, where to start. But this is really where, especially now, like we're, 8 months into the calendar year, you got to really stop playing defense. You got to get out there and start playing offense. And to me, you've got to really invest the time in tightening your targeting. So if you can't name your top 3 agencies, your top 5 buyers, the top 10 opportunities that you're tracking, you just don't really have a game plan. And especially in a tight year like this, where you have even more limited time and resources at your fingertips, you've got to really be smart with where you're investing. So I think that, it's really time to kind of just get in there and start building that strategy and just start executing as well. All right. Question number 2. How do you structure your BD approach in pre-RFP stages to shape opportunities before they hit SAM.gov? So Carol, I'm gonna throw this one to you because I think you've got some thoughts.
Yeah. All right. Well, by the time the RFP hits SAM, your competition's been building relationships with the customer for months or years already. So how do you compete with that? I think keyword there, which you already heard from these young whippersnappers, is relationships. You got to build them. You got to strengthen them. So if you're a new company or you're new to GovCon or you've been around for a while, but you're still small and you don't have a lot of resources, what do? Position early for opportunities. Kristen just said, pick a handful of agencies and a handful of opportunities. Make it a small handful. Pick 2 or 3 agencies that you've got a good shot at. Not all the work you want to do, the work that you can do, that you've got better than a 30% P win, something that you can really go after. And then use those agencies, use the contacts that you've got, use the small business offices. That's what they live for. That's why they're there. Open doors, build relationships. Prime where you can when there are opportunities that are small and targeted to your work, to your industry. Get whatever you can by way of primes, but in this environment, small business opportunities are going away. A lot of them are, not all of them, but a lot of them are. So when you can't prime, build your bench, line up teaming partners. You've all heard the term competitive, right? We compete against them one day and they're our teammate the next. That's what you need to do. You need to team up with large businesses that have the resources, but they need your niche capabilities, or maybe they have a contract that they can't go after anymore because they've grown out of the small business standard. So they can work with you as prime, and you've got an ideal teaming relationship there. Build a simple matrix that shows, here's what I bring to the table, and here's what Beth brings to the table, and here's what Kristen brings to the table. And you look at it and you see where your strengths are and where your gaps are, and go find somebody who can help you fill in that gap. And then show up where the buyers are. I mean, industry days, small business outreaches, user groups. I mean, all the GovCon groups, AFCEA jumps to mind, or the Professional Services Council. Those are a couple of the big opportunities that, they're always holding public industry events. Even the journals out there and all the industry rags, they have all of these events where they have people talking. Go to them, meet the people who are also going to them, get your face and your name and your business card and your contact information in front of their face, become their best friend. As you're doing all of that, you're going to still be looking at RFIs and sources sought market research. You're going to be talking to these people and they're going to be telling you that they're looking for this, or you can go back to Sam and eBuy and look at all of the research. And there is a ton of market research coming out on eBuy right now. I mean, just floods of it. Is that going to turn into real work? Who the heck knows? But that's your best way to see what's coming up, 3 months, 6 months down the pipe, and not only start preparing for it, but also start educating the customer about what the market can bring and about what you can bring. And it gets your name and your logo and your capabilities in front of them so that, when that RFP drops, now you are the ones that are already positioned for it. You're not waiting for something to pop up as a final on sam.gov. By the time that it comes out, you're already aligned to the customer's needs. You've already got your teaming agreement signed and in place, and you're already, past pink team and on your way to getting to blue. That's the way you go about doing it.
Yeah, I think you hit on something important, Carol. It's like communicating your value, both when you're talking to the government, but also when you're talking to potential teaming partners, especially teaming partners. I hear a lot of times like where smalls are approaching primes, to try to get teaming opportunities, and all they're doing is asking for work. They're not bringing any value to the prime. And so you got to do your homework, right? And like know who you're talking to, and know maybe you have access to a contract vehicle or a different agency that prime has been trying to pursue and it doesn't have access to that. So, find your value points and the weak spots in the potential teaming partners and go solve that problem for them. Then they'll be much more likely to give you work.
Yeah, I mean, in any kind of a teaming agreement, it's all about what can I get from you, even as I'm giving something to you. And in a prime sub relationship, if you think just signing on as a sub means that they're going to hand you work, it doesn't work that way. You got to contribute both before and after the contract is awarded.
Yep, exactly. Yep, full circle.
Yeah.
All right. So this one is an interesting question. We all kind of laughed at this one when we saw it, but it's a valid question. So the question is, how are we supposed to shape opportunities when the government doesn't even know what it's doing? So Beth, I'm going to throw this one to you.
Yeah. So this is a really tough one, right? So let's think about this from psychology almost. The government doesn't know what they want. We're trying to figure it out with you. They're thinking about a problem. They need help. This is a partnership between industry and government. So when we talk about shaping, what we're really trying to do is articulate the problem, have enough conversations, enough insight, enough understanding of the market around us to really articulate the root cause of the problem and then provide back a solution and a scope for that solution with some context around, boundaries and how they should be evaluating it. Maybe we're giving a little bit of value around what the budget should look like, because the government folks are feeling this uncertainty too. They don't want to make the wrong decision. They don't want to take the risk on the wrong solution. Maybe they don't know what the solution looks like. So it really reminds me of some career advice that I got kind of a while ago that said, good employees, they hear a problem from their boss and then they bring a solution back. So you don't just bring a problem, you bring a problem with a solution. And if it's not the right one, you kind of refine it back and forth. That's really kind of what we're talking about doing here, only we need to do it without shameless self-promotion in those conversations and instead kind of subtly lead them to where we're going. And so how do we do that? It would be great if you could do that in an RFI or a sources sought or a market research phase or through an industry day. I realize that can be really difficult for everyone. Maybe you didn't have the access. Maybe they didn't have those stages that really came out and asked for that feedback. So I don't want to say if you didn't see this until the RFP dropped, you have no opportunity to shape, because that's not true. But again, it really comes back to understanding the pain points and the risk, and then tying the outcome and the constraints to that, and providing kind of that solution-based language. And some of those solutions can look like, hey, you know what, I see you're having an issue. You're not really sure how you can structure the solicitation. Why don't we use a certain contracting vehicle that's going to limit competition? I've actually found a partner that I can go with under that, so that you have a little bit easier access to what you're looking for. And oh, by the way, here's why you should go with me versus someone else. And in a small business, this can feel probably a little bit intimidating. Maybe you don't know all the different avenues, or maybe you don't know how to articulate that. So it really goes back to that discussion around survival, being laser focused, and really understanding kind of your value proposition, and knowing that you can't respond to every RFI. That's not really what we're recommending here. We're just saying, look for ways to help articulate the solution, and articulate how you can support that solution for the government. And that's kind of a different way to shape, even if you have to do it in your technical volume.
Yeah, I think it's all about making it easy for the buyer, right? Having them have an easy button. I like your idea of pointing them to a vehicle, right? And giving them the answer and making it easy for them, so that they can just execute what they need to get what they need to get their mission accomplished.
That's exactly it. And if, like I said, I know we say a lot of times, and Carol, I totally agree with all of your stages and how to put your BD in place. I do think we get kind of a lot of pushback on all of the pre-RFP activities, because it can be really difficult, especially as a small. So one of the other things I would just highlight is Q&A. It can be really difficult to change pretty specific contracting pieces. Like, you're probably not flipping section M once the RFP is up. But if you're following the draft and you're following the RFP, you can absolutely ask strategic questions to kind of get things shaped your way, and kind of explain to the government in a way that you ask the question, but then also provide the solution. Like, hey, I noticed that this FAR clause is not being included around, past performance specific to the prime. The recommendation is to include this FAR clause in this section, right on this page, right with this period at the end of the sentence. Would you consider that? That's a very carefully crafted question that leads the government where you're trying to go. That's also a form of shaping that can really kind of move things into your direction.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Beth. Anybody who's familiar with Oasis Plus or NASA Soup, that the government received literally thousands of questions, and those who didn't run screaming out into the night spent a long time responding to those questions. And there were some very significant changes to both of those RFPs as a result of those multiple series of questions. That's a really good point.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's a mix too, a balance, especially for smalls of, I always say, like, having that hustle and being hungry. And so that sometimes means you're going to go after stuff that you didn't shape and you didn't get the opportunity pre-RFP to influence at all, right? But I love your idea, Beth, of like influencing through the Q&A post RFP drop. I mean, that's a great way to do it, while still being smart with your limited resources, right? Because as a small, you can't go after everything, but you do have to you got to be out there hustling and be hungry for stuff. And that sometimes means you have to submit on things that you didn't know about, but there's still ways to be smart about it. All right, next one. I love this question. I'm excited. This one is, how do you deal with a capture manager who ghosted the team 3 months before the RFP dropped? I was thinking about how to answer this one, and like my first response was they probably should be fired. I don't know. I mean, get them out of here. Like, ghosting your team 3 months before an RFP seems like an automatic, like, thanks for your service, sir. Good luck in your next adventure. You don't work here anymore. But I'm sure that's not a helpful answer. But I think if that does happen, like, look, you got to get ruthless about recovery and about your game plan at that point. So anything that's not been documented might be gone, because that person, who knows where they are? They're on a beach somewhere enjoying a better life. I don't know. Good luck. So you got to pull together whatever intel you can and just start filling those gaps immediately. Get an interim lead, on that capture, especially if it's still pre-RFP. And don't just spend a whole week like bitching internally and complaining about it. Like, it is what it is. You've got to move forward, right? And I also was thinking about this, like, if one person leaving and disappearing in the night derails your entire pursuit, then that's really on your process. So you didn't really have a capture strategy at that point. You had like a hostage situation. So take a step back and like think about your process and why your whole game plan and strategy relied on one single person. I fought the fight many, many, many years and many, many times over when I worked in corporate about why we needed to document our capture strategies and our win strategies and put it in our CRM system. And everyone always said, we don't want to put our secret sauce in a platform that everyone in the company can see. But it's like, okay, people get in, they go on vacations, bad things happen to people, like they disappear in the night, like who knows? But if your strategy is relying on one single person, that seems like a hostage situation, which is not great for how to win work. So that was a fun one. All right, next one. How do I convince my PM that pricing strategy, and I love that they put quotes around pricing strategy, is not just a number, not just pulling a number out of thin air? I don't know. I don't do numbers. I do words. So it feels like pricing strategy is you just like pull a number out of thin air. But Beth, you do this for a living, so maybe you have better ideas.
Right?
So let me just start by saying that if pricing strategy was just like being pulled out of thin air or throwing darts at the board, I would spend a lot more time at the bar gambling money on darts than I do being like the really cool person that is a spreadsheet nerd always looking for the newest, coolest tricks in Excel.
You'd be with that capture manager on the previous slide, like on a beach somewhere.
Pricing strategy, let me just like answer this call real quick. How many seagulls do I see? So pricing strategy is really actually very important. And I think it's misunderstood a lot of times.
What?
But I know, but it represents your ability to have a sustainable business approach, first and foremost.
That's boring.
I know it is really boring, but you know what isn't boring is like the lights working in your office and the air conditioning working when it's
valid.
like degrees and hot. So, sustainable business, right? Like
whatever.
Which, it does sound boring, but winning the right work at the wrong price is actually really bad for you. Winning work that you thought you really wanted, but you didn't financially responsibly bid can be truly devastating.
Oh crap, we won.
Yeah, like, oh my God. And if you don't have a recovery plan, you don't have a get well plan, you could lose a bunch of money. You could get really bad CPARs that are going to haunt you for a while. So pricing strategy is in fact very important. And it's not just pulling it out of thin air. It's actually just a lot of data analysis. And so we really have to do the diligence around that. And it can feel like a race to the bottom. It can feel like you have no idea what you're doing. But at the end of the day, pricing strategy really is making sure that you're pulling together your cost, building a price that can allow your company to be financially stable and ideally continue to grow. It also communicates your understanding of the requirements. If you come in way too low, the government's going to look at you like, do you know what you're doing? And so you also want to be fair and reasonable. You're supposed to be a trusted partner. And I can't emphasize that enough. I know that there are times it can feel like, oh, that person is just losing money to win work. Well, if they're losing money to win work, I mean, I guess let them lose the work, like let them lose the money. That doesn't have to be you, or they may just have a different business model than you. And that's okay too. Doesn't mean you have to keep going. So next time someone says pricing strategy is just pulling it out of thin air, just remind them how much they really enjoy having a job. And if they keep going with that strategy, they're not going to have one and probably not go to the beach this year.
And the air conditioning might not work, I learned.
Right,
which is not
going to be really
good.
hot here.
All right. Next one. These guys were funny. They love some quotes when they submit questions, whoever these people were that submitted all these questions. So this one says, if my boss says, just reuse the last one more time, can I claim temporary insanity? Carol, what do you think?
Ah! I tell you what, any
Tell me how you
harm
really
done,
feel.
any harm done, a jury of your peers will find justifiable. Seriously. Yeah, everything that we've been saying about customer relationships and shaping and strategy, that reuse proposal, all of that applied to when you originally wrote that content, 1 month or a year or 3 years ago. Um, you know, if you're if you're reusing it, even parts of it, that really only works if you're writing to the same customer for the same thing, you know, next week. Even to the same customer and the same work a year later, it's different. You can't just recycle that proposal and change the date. It's okay to start with something that you've already done. I mean, some basic processes or flow charts or diagrams, they're going to look pretty much the same, but you've still got to go back and say, what do I know about this customer? What do I know about what I'm trying to sell and what they're trying to buy? If that content still looks the same when you press submit, then you know what? I'm going to bet you your lunch that your win-loss ratio has a direct relationship to how much you reuse content.
Yeah. I think this is also my problem with a lot of like AI generated proposal content. I know that everyone's getting hot and heavy and using AI, and I love AI. I use it every day. But it spits out such like the sentences sound great in theory, but they're so vanilla and so boring, and they don't tell
Yeah,
a story and they don't communicate the value and the impact. And we often forget that on the other side of these proposals, there's people reading these proposals and people that
yeah,
don't want to be reading these proposals. Like, this is not their favorite part of their job. They don't want to read hundreds of pages of this shit. So the more we can do to like spice it up and add some, value and impact and just communicate why they should choose you versus just taking the last proposal, maybe updating some information that's still not going to communicate why they should care, we're doing ourselves a disservice because the person on the other side is not going to be able to grasp why they should choose you above everyone else.
right. What customer X cared about last year is not the same thing as what customer
Right.
Y cares about this year.
Right. Yep. Exactly. Exactly. All right. Next one. How do you get seller doers to prioritize BD when they are buried in billable work? I feel pretty passionate about this one because I've spent my entire career before starting this business working in the AEC industry where, a lot of companies don't have BD folks, they have seller doers. And so those seller doers are responsible for executing the work, but also selling the work, selling the next project. And my philosophy has always been that billable hours keep the lights on, but BD keeps the lights on next year. And even if you don't have a business development person, the seller doers doing BD, means that if you ignore one of those things, whether you ignore the billable work or you ignore the BD efforts, like next year you're going to be sitting in the dark. So, or you're not going to have a company. So that means you have to change the system. So again, if like BD is an optional thing, it's going to be dead last behind the billable work every single time. And I think the more important point is that seller doers, most of them are technical folks. They're great at what they do. They know how to execute the shit out of whatever project it is that they're doing. But the thought of doing BD is for them, it's equivalent to being a sleazy car salesman. They don't want to do it. They like rebel against it because it feels so foreign to them. But you have to change the mindset and you have to give them the tools, and help them. BD is not about pushing something to a client that the client doesn't need. It's about listening. It's about spotting problems. It's about bringing real solutions. And honestly, seller doers are the right people to be doing that because they're already doing that every day. They just don't call it BD, right? And I also think there's this notion, I wrote a post about this on LinkedIn recently. There's this notion of like it's us versus them. It's the proposal team or the BD team versus the seller doers. And it has to be a cohesive collective team. BD and delivery are two halves of the same growth engine for a company. And so the people that are on the front lines with the customer have the best access, the best insight, and really the most credibility to open doors for that next opportunity. And that's often the seller doers. So our job as proposal people or BD people or the leadership team of the company is to make it easy for them. You've got to give them the tools, the talking points, the support, the room and time to grow into really thinking and shifting their mindset from tunnel vision, I'm just here to execute this project for a client, to no, I'm here to support my client and bring solutions and help position my company for the next project. So I think that's a big mindset shift that has to be undertaken for seller doers to really be comfortable prioritizing BD, because otherwise, they feel gross about it and then they don't do it. And then you might not have a company next year.
I'd also add to what you had to say. I think all of that is right. But when we also are talking about kind of changing the system, thinking about it a different way, let's talk about incentives, right? I think there's a big perception difference between folks that are operational than the folks that sit in BD or in sales. There's this like perception idea that the people that sit in BD or in sales are like going out to fancy lunches, they're making these huge bonuses.
They're playing golf all day.
Yeah, they're playing golf all day. And I mean, yes, there are times that the job requires going to a trade show and going to a fancy dinner. I'll be the first one to tell you they're super exhausting. You're away from your family, you're away from home. So it's still hard, but yeah, sure, you got like some fancy food. At the end of the day, though, you have operations folks that are going into a client site every day, and they need the incentive to help support the other side of the job. And if they feel like you're getting all the credit while they're doing a lot of the work, it doesn't help. So just some kind of like practical things that you can do are making sure that you understand the client schedule. So if your seller doer is actually on client site, like when is the best time to hold meetings? It might suck, but probably the lunchtime hour is going to be best, even though for the rest of us that work a desk job 9 to 5, not on client site, like we like to eat. Keeping in mind like bonus plans, if there's a bonus plan for a win, include your operations people. They still supported you and helped you. So come up with that capture bonus plan that includes everybody that touched the proposal so that they have a piece of skin in the game. And I think that really kind of marries making sure they have the tools, the talking points, the follow-up support. But now you're actually showing them like incentive support and putting the money where your mouth is. So I think that's a huge piece that often gets overlooked.
I agree. I think that's a great idea. Money talks and money helps motivate.
It does.
Always. Yep.
Does.
All right. Back to pricing. So Carol and I are going to be quiet for a second because, again, we do words, not numbers. So this question says, is pricing just a guessing game of what your competitor is charging?
I like that everyone thinks pricing is guessing. I really
That's because that's what we do with numbers.
I was gonna say, it's not what I get from a lot of questions. So and everybody loves to know what their competitors are doing. It's kind of crazy, right? So let's just take like a step back. And why do we need to know that? What are we doing with the information that we're getting? Well, the first thing we're doing is we're putting context to like what we think our customer is willing to pay and understanding what their budget is so that we can price within what they believe is going to be the realm of normal. I'm going to put that in context of like if I go buy a car. If I walk into a dealership and they try to sell me a Ferrari, first of all, I can't afford it. But like, second of all, I have 2 car seats that are never going to fit. So that just doesn't work, right? And if they never did any research on me as the customer, that's what they're going to offer me and not realize it's like way, way out of bounds. So we're really trying to understand what the customer is willing to pay. And the goal is not to be just a few percentage points lower than our competitor. The pricing strategy really shouldn't be like, oh, let's just be 10% less than the incumbent. Oh, like what? Are they even making money on that? Does that fit within our business goals? So it's not just a competitor guessing game because that may not fit back to our business goals, back to us showing that we understand what is going on in the competition. But it also doesn't have to be a guessing game because there's a lot of data out there. And there's a misperception that you're going to have to spend hours and hours and hours. But now that we understand why we need to know the pricing, let's talk about how somewhat easy it can be and why it doesn't have to be a guess. So once you know how to use it and that you're using it for the right ways, there's a lot of publicly available data that we can do a really quick overview on or a deep dive. And so US has probably the most transparent government spending out of any other nation in the world in terms of the amount that we put out there. So there's USA spending, FPDS, GAO reports to help understand customer behavior. There's Bureau of Labor Statistics. There's the president's budget and all sorts of other stuff. And guess what? All of that is free 99, $0 of your money to understand all that information. So you don't have to guess. You just put in some good old-fashioned time doing research, crunching some numbers in a spreadsheet, and then throw in a side of analysis, and you're no longer guessing, and you know how to put it in context to help you understand your customer better.
I love that you said just fill in a spreadsheet, crunch some numbers. I lost track of what you said when you started talking about a Ferrari, to be honest.
Well, that's because you were dreaming about a car.
I'm sitting here wondering what language is you speaking?
Yeah, what color Ferrari are we getting? I mean, that's really the more important question.
I mean, I'd go for purple, but like
yes, thank you.
It's still out of my price range and doesn't fit my car seats.
Who cares? Details. All right. What's your take on color team reviews? So I have to tell a story about this first, and then Carol, I know you've got some thoughts. So I was out and about last week. I won't say where, but I was out and about. You can look at my LinkedIn and figure out where it was. And I was at a networking event, and somebody came up to me and shook my hand and introduced themselves. And they work for the company that created these color team reviews. And again, you can figure out who that is. Starts with an S, ends with Y. And like his first question to me was, what do you think about the Shipley process? And I was like, oh, it doesn't work in the real world. And he got very, very flustered because he works there and I'm sure they're supposed to believe in it. But I've been trying for 20 something years to use that process and make it fit, and it just doesn't work, right? In the real world, excuse me. So I think when we start talking about color team reviews, I have the same opinion. Like, it just doesn't work in the real world. I think you need some sort of review, yes, but like 100 different colors in the span of months just doesn't happen in real life. So Carol, I know you've got some thoughts on that, but why don't you take it away?
Well, that process worked back in the days when I was young and Lockheed was building planes and hangars piece by piece, and your solution was being designed and printed out and tacked on the walls, and you were writing notes that you sent into the secretarial pool, and they typed them up at night so that you could look at the paper fresh the next morning, and then put red lines and sticky notes and stick it back up on the wall. That's where we talk about, the war room and the wall, that those were real at some point. Now we have the internet.
What?
So your walls are virtual, and you don't have 3 years on most RFPs to write. It doesn't work that way. You get 10 days, 30 days, maybe 45 or 60 on some bigger things. And if you spend all your time trying to schedule color team reviews, then you're reviewing nothing because nobody's had any time to write. And even when you do them, they're almost never done correctly. The reviewers spend all their time correcting your grammar and punctuation, even after you've told them, don't correct the grammar and punctuation. That's what they do.
But really, there should be a comma here.
I can do grammar and punctuation. I can't design the solution. Exactly. It's like you design the solution, you review the solution, you point out what's right and what's wrong with the solution. Let me take care of the commas, for heaven's sake. And then you get the pricing, all that gobbledygook Beth was just talking about. They don't review it at the same time or in the same sync with the technical and management proposal. So there's like no connection. You're looking at the pricing narrative and wondering what the hell they're talking about, because that's not what you just read in the technical volume. Yeah, and then the writers get all the feedback from the reviewers, and they're pissed off because they took it all personal because they've been working so hard, and they get all this criticism back, and their feelings are all hurt, and they don't want to work anymore, and so they just ignore it, and they go on with what they were doing. And if that sounds like your system is broken. It can be done correctly, not in the 96-point process in most cases, but you can adapt a review concept. What I find most often, and y'all tell me different, if you come up with other things, but what I find most effective is to do a series of asynchronous reviews, because some sections are going to be ready earlier and you can get eyeballs on them while you're focusing on bringing the other sections up to speed, and maybe at the end you have something that you could call a red team, where somebody's reading it through end to end, not at the very end of your process, but like say 2/3 of the way through, you get somebody reading it end to end to make sure that pricing talks to management, which talks to staffing, which talks to transition. But telling everybody to put their pens down for a day or 2 days while you pretty up the publishing, and then you get the editors that come back and tell you to change your commas and to use past tense. And I recently spent an hour listening to a team argue over whether to use past tense or present tense in their corporate experience volume, and I was ready to jump out the window. There are ways to achieve the goal, which is to make sure that something I have written doesn't go out the door without Kristen's eyeballs on it and without Beth checking to make sure it syncs with pricing. But it doesn't have to be that formal 96 process, because baby, I don't have a secretarial pool anymore.
No. And we also have to remember, like you said in the beginning, like that process was built like hundreds of years ago. It feels like, sorry, Carol,
I'm not that old.
It's 2025. Like we work differently, like everyone thinks differently, like we have to evolve. And that process, I don't think has evolved ever. And so we kind of have to shift how we do things. And I like doing it in bite-sized chunks, like you said, and asynchronous reviews, and just getting the most important eyeballs and the most important pieces along the way, instead of like, who has time to stop writing for 48 hours while everyone reviews? Like it doesn't work. It doesn't happen.
I will add, just because, why not? One thing I really like to do, especially in kind of smaller teams, is have the pricer or pricing lead read part of the technical or management as part of the review. And then on the flip side, have someone from technical management read the pricing. And I know that can sound terrifying. I can already barely see your faces. You're like this tiny, but I can imagine your facial expressions. But I like that because we're also siloed. And it's really hard to tie that together. And I can just tell you right now, everyone can still read English. We all have reading comprehension skills. So if we're familiar with the RFP but can't survive the technical, it needs to change. And vice versa. If you're reading the pricing volume and you're like, what the heck is this person writing? Like, why does it not make sense? That's how the reviewers are going to feel too. Like, they don't want to read just FAR clause. Like,
right.
Absolutely not. So yeah, I totally agree. It's all outdated, but that's just like a tiny little tangible thing that you can start taking away is kind of shifting who's doing some of the reviewing, both to cross-educate the team, but also to get fresh eyes and really make sure that it all makes sense.
Yeah, I like that idea. Because you're right, everyone is in silos. Like the pricing people don't talk to the technical people because we don't understand the same language. But I think reading those volumes is really important, and making sure that we're aligned. Because if you're not pricing what you're saying you're going to execute, like, and vice versa, like you're going to get in trouble.
The amount of times I've gone in and read the staffing plan and been like, well, this doesn't look anything like what I just wrote about. So I probably need to fix that, or, hey, that said X number of FTEs, but that's not what I wrote. Yeah. So just, making sure you cross-check that, because a lot of times we do look at them so individually. So just something for you guys to take away with you.
Yep.
While you fix the rest of the broken color team process.
Yeah, and I'm looking at the comments on our LinkedIn event, and it looks like we've made Robert and Sarah very happy because they agree with us that Sarah, I like your idea that you do rolling red reviews while the writers are still updating the document as the reviewers are finding issues and making suggestions. So like it's constantly evolving together on SharePoint. Like, hello, again, it's 2025. Like use our tools called SharePoint, sharepoint.com. All right. Next question. What do you think is going to happen with T4 and G2? Carol, what do you think?
Yeah, I actually got that question a few days ago on LinkedIn, and I kind of rethought my response a little bit. Basically, historically, GSA plays pretty nicely with VA. The VA schedule program is basically the same thing as the GSA schedule program, but VA manages it, and it's aimed toward medical solutions. So my initial response was, I think, for the near term, it's probably safe, but, the option periods probably would wind up going away. But then, the more I think about it, we should put T4N G2 up there with CIOSP4 in terms of the disasters out there. And looking at, the fact that it's due to expire next year, I have a feeling that it's just going to die a silent death with the scope of the work being herded over to the MASS program and OASIS Plus, because there are, medical sins on the GSA schedule program, and OASIS Plus covers the rest of the scope. Excuse me. So, that's kind of my revised view from my crystal ball.
Yep. We've said it before, but all roads are leading to that GSA schedule and OASIS Plus.
Yep.
So this is kind of the same question. So with GSA still facing protests over Polaris and Alliant 3, why are they any better positioned to take over CISP 4 or SUIT 6? Carol.
Yeah, that's a really good question. Oh, did you want an answer? Oh.
I think so. Look at that crystal ball.
Yeah, that poor thing is cloudy and cracked.
It's pretty busted at this point.
Right now, all I can say is they have a huge lessons learned file. I mean, that's taking up all their SharePoint storage space right there. Honestly, I think, and I don't have any government direct intel or anything like this. Just kind of me looking through that crystal ball. I think CIOSP4 is destined for oblivion. There's nothing in the scope that really makes it unique. I think the same is true for the service parts of SUIT 6. But if they're smart, they'll take a lot of the people from NASA that have been, managing that contract so efficiently, and they'll bring them over to continue managing the products part of SUIT 6. And then the services can go to MASS or OASIS. I mean, it's all part of GSA's takeover plan.
Yep, they are definitely taking over.
Yeah.
All right. Carol, you're up for this one too. Should small businesses even bother bidding as a prime anymore?
Absolutely, but not on the approach of if it moves, bid on it. That's never a really good strategy. And, especially not this year. We've already talked about this, teaming's more important than ever. Don't be proud and don't be shy. If the work is in your wheelhouse and you know the customer, but you don't have the resources to bid on it by yourself, then go find teammates. Find other smalls in the same boat. Look for common opportunities. Find a prime and form a JV, even a mentor protege JV that gives you prime credit. So there are ways to do it, and you shouldn't stop doing it, but it's not going to be easy.
Yeah, it's all about pivoting, right? And being smart. And again, not just sitting on your hands and hoping the work comes, because it's not going to come.
It's not.
Yep. This question kind of relates to one about the seller doers above, but this one specifically, how do you get SMEs to contribute usable proposal content when they're doing their day jobs? And again, like SMEs get buried in delivery work. They're having to be 95% billable So you can't just like toss them a blank sheet of paper and say, here, we need this section written and then just hope for brilliance, because let's face it, that doesn't happen ever in life. So Carol, I know you have some specific ideas here.
Yeah, well, I think Beth had a great idea earlier, which is like motivate them. Money talks. So give them some share in the profit for when you win. But for the process in a proposal, for most of them, don't give them a blank page. Give them a starting point, even if it's wrong. And in fact, sometimes, especially if it's wrong, they get all excited and say, "No, this is wrong," and they start writing. For those who don't write and you still can't, find the carrot to make them write, or they do write and it's really bad, pick up the phone, interview them. Just do a straight out interview. And if you're still getting pushback and resistance, then sometimes you got to go up the food chain and get their boss involved and say, look, if you want to keep doing the day job that you're doing, then you need to help us win the follow-on contract. And there's a little carrot there. If we win, not only do you get to keep your job, but you get some sort of, some sort of revenue sharing or gift card or whatever it is as part of it.
Yeah, and again, I think it can't be a us versus them. Like if you're a proposal manager, like Carol and I, right? It's not us versus the SMEs. Your job is to guide them to what you need, and they're bringing the technical magic and that expertise, but your job is to translate that into a proposal that wins. So sometimes that means hopping on a call and asking them a bunch of questions and then writing it yourself for them to get angry that it's wrong and then get motivated to fix it all. So sometimes it's those like little subliminal things that will help get you what you need. All right, another pricing question, and I felt this, like this person that submitted this, I think they've been having a rough one. So they said, "Why do we always lose on price?" So Beth, what do you think?
Well, I'm pretty sure you put my soapbox issue question at the end so that I couldn't rant for too long. But I'm just going to go ahead and throw it out there. We don't lose on price. I think we like to say it's super easy to blame the pricers. We've already admitted throughout this entire presentation, we really don't understand pricing or why we do it or how we got up the numbers. So it's also just as easy to say, not only it's a magic number, but this is why we lost. But in my experience, that's never usually the direct and only reason that we've lost. In my experience, I've been way over my competition and won. I've been under my competition and I've lost. I've had it flipped and won or lost. So I've seen it go both ways. But what does it really come down to? It comes down to my technical scores. That's really what's decided my win or loss. But it's so much easier to and more quantifiable to look at my price. And so really though, when we look at my actual technical volume, maybe my price was right and in line, but my past performance wasn't as strong. It didn't have as many strengths as my competition. Or maybe my technical approach was a totally different business model than what my competition was using. So it's not to say that price is not important, because it absolutely is. We need to be in competitive range. We need to understand what our customer can afford, and we really need to be able to articulate the price value that we've included with the technical value we're bringing. But if your technical volume can't convince you, the number is not going to save you. So let's stop saying that we lost on price, do a little bit of introspection here and figure out, like, what was it? Did we lose on price? If we were really, really high, why were we so high? Did we have the right staffing mix? Did we understand what type of staff they were really looking for? Are we including a lot of benefits that other people aren't including? And if that fits our business model, then maybe this wasn't the right work for us. So there's a lot more to it than just we lost on price.
It's easy to blame your feelings. Right? It's more fun to just blame Beth, I think. I mean, I don't know.
I know, but it's so mean.
All right, I think we've got 4 more questions left, so I'm going to try to speed through these because we're running out of time. So the next one is, why should we go after another IDIQ when we haven't ever won any task orders on the ones we have? Well, you probably shouldn't, right, Carol?
Yeah, you shouldn't. Why grind your people into the dirt again on something that you and they know you're not going to win? Do your proposals actually suck? Then you need to find an expert at him to help you improve the process and the product.
Hey, we
Are
know
you
some
going after the wrong
experts.
things? I'm sorry, go ahead.
I said, hey, we know some experts.
Hey, we do. We know some experts. I got some names for you. Yeah. Are you going after the wrong things? Then you need to fix your pipeline. Again, we got some experts on that. And are you bidding on shit just to bid and you know nothing about the customer? And like I said earlier, your BD system is broken or non-existent. And again, we got experts to help.
Right. Yep. All right. Next one. How can I justify hiring a proposal manager or editor or graphic designer when I can just do it myself, just as well myself? So I don't know who submitted this or what role they are coming from, but I kind of viewed this as like a C-suite executive of a small business or something. And just because you can do it yourself doesn't mean that you should be doing it. My business for Summit, we run it on EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so they have a philosophy called delegate and elevate. And it's supposed to really make you assess everything that you're doing in your day to day and making sure that it's really in your unique ability or zone of genius, whatever you want to call it, and just get everything off your plate. So every hour that you're spending formatting a resume or chasing section deadlines or tweaking graphics is an hour that you're not doing something really important like building your pipeline, shaping opportunities, closing deals, tightening your pricing strategy like Beth just talked about. So, hiring a proposal manager, editor, designer, whatever, it's not an expense, it's an investment that is freeing you up to do the high value work that only you can do for the business and stuff that actually grows your business. So think about it from that perspective instead of just thinking like, oh, I can do this myself. And that's really hard for people that like to do everything themselves. And I'm speaking as one of those people myself. It's hard to really let go of things, but to get to the next level and to really free your time up for the most important stuff, you have to make that tough decision. All right, this might be the second to last question. So let's hurry up. We've got 3 minutes left. So this one says, why waste time or space writing an executive summary if it's not required? Carol, what do you think about this one?
Well, a couple of reasons, and that process we won't name says you should do it first, and nobody ever does it. But it serves as a focus for your entire team, your writers, your reviewers, and your executive team to make sure you're on the same page. That doesn't mean that what you wrote in March stays static. You evolve it as you evolve your solution. You've probably got a capture deck or some kind of presentation that you use for a bid no bid decision that has all the customer and opportunity intel. So you distill that down into 1 or 2 pages and you've got what amounts to a functional executive summary. And then, you turn around and use that as part of your price justification because you've just given a comprehensive overview and you put it in as an intro to your text section and you've just given the evaluators a nice, easy copy and paste to support selecting you. So why wouldn't you do it unless it's expressly forbidden from doing it? You want to put that in there.
Yeah. Yep. And again, make it easy on the client to understand what it is you're selling and why they should choose you above everyone else.
Yeah.
All right, last question. Again, it's about pricing. Like I'm just bored to tears over here. I'm just does the government really read my pricing narrative? I'd actually like to know this too. So Beth, what do you think?
So I think they do because they have to, right? Like they've got some compliance checks that they have to go through. But kind of what you just said, right? There's humans on the other side. We often write pricing narratives like there's not a human on the other side. So they read them and they kind of fall asleep or their eyes, roll in the back of their heads. But in reality, yes, they're reading them. They have compliance requirements that they need to go through and double check, make sure that you've put in the right language. But really, they're going to focus more on it when they need to think about your price justification. So if they're trying to make sure they understand like what's driving your price a little bit higher than your competition, or if you've gone a little bit lower, they need to understand that you definitely have fair and reasonable, and that you have taken that approach, and that you really do understand how to mitigate any kind of risk associated with the price that you've put together, especially if you have BOVs included, which you oftentimes should. They're really going to want to make sure, do you really understand the staffing? Do you really understand what it's going to take to do this? Do you really understand the bill of materials? Have you mitigated risk throughout your supply chain? All those good things. So kind of an analogy would be like, it's like a seatbelt, right? Like you don't really think about it. It's always there. But when you hit a bump, you do want to make sure that it's working and that it's got you covered. So that's how we think about the pricing narrative. So yeah, they read it sometimes.
Yep. And again, we forget that there's humans and they don't want to be reading this stuff. They really don't.
Make it easy. Make it easy.
Make it easy. Right. Exactly. All right. So right on time, we did pretty great there. So our next session really quick is going to be September 15th. So we've spent a lot of these first 8 sessions really talking about BD stuff, proposals, contract vehicles, and we're going to switch a little bit of the focus and talk about brand, which is not a dirty word. And we're going to talk about how your brand might be costing you some wins and you might not even know it. So that's on September 15th. That QR code in the top right goes straight to the LinkedIn page so that you can register. So open up your phone camera, scan that, and go hit sign up so that you save your spot for that event. And like usual, here's my contact information. That QR code goes straight to my calendar. So feel free to reach out if you're interested in chatting about needing help with any of this stuff or want to further talk shit about color reviews or whatever it is. We'll be happy to jump on a call and do so. But again, thank you for attending today. This was fun to do. I like this type of kind of more casual conversation. We had a lot of fun. So thank you all. Thanks for submitting your questions. Hopefully we did you justice and solved all your problems today. If not, reach out and we'll blame Beth for it if we didn't solve all your problems.
Always the pricers. Always.
Always. All right. Talk to you guys later.
Bye, guys.
Bye.